Hi everyone, I'm examining a pair of earrings that I just finished constructing. Let's take a closer look. The earrings themselves consist of concentric rectangular forms that frame handmade rice paper beads. And because the beads are handmade, the color possibilities within each pair of earrings is unlimited. The tools that are needed to make the concentric rectangular earrings are the standard chain link pliers, a pair of round nose pliers, and I also use this pair of flat chain link pliers. This happens to be the ideal width for the first bend over here because it's exactly 1/8 of an inch. Simply another pair of flat nose pliers that I use quite often. And we need our flush cutters. Aside from that, we're going to need a steel block or a small anvil to forge the piece on. Flatten out the wire and work hard in the rectangular shapes. And I do that with my chasing hammer. And this comes in handy. A self-healing cutting board with ruler gradations. I use this for measuring and cutting my wire. To make the ear wire that you see it hanging from, I used bail making pliers. Please see my video on how to make ear wires to learn how to do this. And only use sterling silver wire, 20 gauge, to construct your ear wires. And finally, for the purpose of this demonstration, I will use 18 gauge nickel silver wire, dead soft, round. Since you will be cutting wire and pieces can go flying out, you want to protect your eyes. I always wear a pair of protective goggles. The first thing I do to begin construction of my earrings is to measure out the needed wire. I measure out 11 inches of 18 gauge nickel silver wire. Okay. Having measured out my 2 lengths of wire, the first thing I'm going to do is make that first bend. The first bend forms the upright that will hold the bead. I just found a scrap laying on the side, and this is the upright that I'm talking about. Also notice how irregular the parallel lines are, and that this is much more nicely formed. The reason for that is I made these bends, all of them. Then I forged my metal to flatten the wire and firm it up. That caused that element of irregularity. I discovered that what needs to be done is after each bend, the wire needs to be hammered at the point of the bend. That locks in a much nicer 90-degree angle. Measuring 1/2 inch from the tip of the wire, I position my pair of pliers, nice, and I make that bend. What I'll do after I make the bend is I'll squeeze the corner some more with my pliers to sharpen that angle. Having done that, I position the wire on the steel block, and I hammer the corner that I just made with my chasing hammer. Beautiful hammer. And you could hammer down that piece of metal too. But notice I don't carry the hammer and beyond the immediate corner, at least not yet, because I want to make the second bend. Having established that first bend, The next thing I'm going to do is make my second bend. So we have one bend. This will be the second bend, and it'll bring the line of the wire up parallel to the center. To make that bend, I'm going to measure out 1/8 of an inch. And you can do that on with your ruler, or in this case, the self-healing mat. Well, what I'm going to use is the pair of pliers, because it is just about 1/8 of an inch. See that? Okay, so it'll actually be slightly more than 1/8 of an inch, because I can't get it tight. Although it's 90 degrees, the corner has a slightly rounded quality, so I can't really get as tight up against there as I'd like to, but that's fine. Turn it up. Make sure my lines are reasonably parallel. Now I hammer it. And that is the difference between this and that. This, I made all the bends first, then hammered it. This, I hammered each bend individually. And I much prefer the result there. But notice, I didn't hammer all the way up, because that would make the metal so hard, it would become difficult to make the next bend. I make the bend at 5/8 of an inch from that bend. The cutting board, measure at 5/8 of an inch. Good. Here, I make the next bend. So far, so good. Before I move on, I'll lock that in place. The heart of the piece, and what sets the pace for the rest of the piece, is the establishment of that first rectangular form. Once you get that form, even if it's not exactly the measurements I'm showing you here, it doesn't have to be, but the important thing is to establish a nice central rectangular form. Then all subsequent rectangles become an echo of the central rectangle. And since this was made by positioning these pliers here, now line up the pliers with the center wire to make the next bend. And bend it down. The way I keep track of the size that I'm shooting for, size of the rectangle, is I count my bends. And I have so far 1, 2, 3, 4 bends. To make this earring took exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 bends to arrive at the top of the earring. After that bend, to determine the length of this, I actually measure up against the piece. How do I do that? So I'll position the pliers against the inside of the wire, like that. Make it parallel to that line over there, and bend my wire. But, and this is important, I discovered this actually makes a difference. Do not bend the wire this way. Ultimately, you want the wire to go this way. But I find that by first bending the wire down, and I'll repeat this because this may be a little ambiguous, and then crimping both ends back and forth, by bending it down first, then turning the wire like that gives you a sharper angle. And that's important to me. If it's not important to you, don't worry about it. But that is important to me. Place that on the steel block, hammer it out. We're on our way. For all lines of the rectangle, or I should say all sides of the rectangle, I will be measuring up against the existing sides that I've already made. Take the chain link flat nose pliers, position them against the inner wall of that side, bend the wire perpendicular away from the piece, and maybe crimp it a little bit more. Then bend it up parallel. I find that method of bending makes a difference. I examine it carefully, make sure it's doing what I want it to do. Then I'll commit it to metal memory. We continue this way. I line it up. See? I make my perpendicular bend. Then I rebend. Holding it firmly to keep the angle from shifting. I'll take my hammer now and lock it in place. Do it again. See where I'm positioning that? Bend my wire, then rebend. Holding it so it doesn't spring out. When I forge it, it loses the ability to spring out. Good. Press hard with my thumb. Line it up against the inner part of the wall of that side. Bend it out, perpendicular to the piece. Then rebend it so I make another parallel side. I'm also coming down to the home stretch. I set a total of 15 bends, and that's how I measure the size of the individual earring, by counting the bends. Where are we with this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Hey, we're coming into the home stretch. 14, 15. Okay. So, let's make our bend number 14 and bend it out. Our final bend that completes the rectangle, number 15. I bend the wire down. I want it sharp. Good. Now I'm going to bend the wire out. We still have to make a final top bend where the loop will be formed. Now to make that final bend, what I can do is I can simply measure up from my center line right there and bend it up. That'll keep it nice and centered. I'll bend my wire out. Then up. And a little additional flattening. Good. It's bent. The bead will fit on this. So the center part points up. I do that on purpose. I want the bead to sit on the piece. Gravity hold it in place. Also, I could go as far as gluing this to that to lock it in place. But I like the idea that there's movability, and it's not going to come out because it's locked in there. It's literally set in place with the wire. So now to make the top, position the earring against your ruler. And for this bend, I'm going to use my chain link pliers, my needle nose chain link pliers. I like to measure out 1/4 of an inch from the bend at the top of the earring. And I bend my wire out at a 45-degree angle. That 45-degree angle is about to center the loop I'm about to make. Having bent the wire out at a 45-degree angle, I put aside my chain link pliers, pick up my round nose pliers, position those round nose pliers at that bend, and turn my wire at the relatively narrow tip of the pliers. I'd say maybe I drop down just about 1/8 of an inch diameter, maybe a little less. 2 pliers often helps. Okay? I'm going to lock the loop in place by holding it firmly. Again, I'll use 2 pair of pliers to do this. Holding it firmly on the loop, grabbing the end, and then tightly wrapping that around. See what I'm doing? 1, 2. Okay. Also, I'm coiling around that, so, I'll have to back out if I want to continue this. And you don't have to use these wide pliers. Maybe it would have been smarter in doing that to grab an additional pair of chain link pliers. I put these grooves in here to facilitate the process of making ear wires. And I believe I talk about that in my video entitled How to Make Ear Wires. Okay, back to this. So we have 1, 2 wraps around. Let's see if we can get a third. Okay, I managed to work in the third, but didn't come as tight as I like. Does that mean I have a problem? Not necessarily. Cut off the excess. Hold it so it doesn't fly out. I'm also wearing my goggles. And if somebody was standing here with me, they'd be wearing goggles, just as a precautionary. Here, let's take a look at this. This is irregular. It flares out too much. I find that unacceptable. Can I fix it? Yes, I can. I'll take my flat nose pliers and begin to press into the coil gently. I don't want to distort its shape. I need to compress down a little bit. Still flaring out too much, but by gently pressing into the coil, I'm able to correct that flaring out and tighten the coil. With sterling silver, this works wonderfully. It even polishes the silver as you do it. This motion you see me doing right here gives sterling silver coils that are formed on earrings like this a beautiful look. Yeah, that's tight. That's good. If I feel any kind of roughness, I'll grab a jewelry file, a needle nose jewelry file, and file into it. Round that corner so it's not sharp. Or I could bring it over to my flexible shaft and polish it with a polishing wheel. There we have it. We have 1/2 of the earring pair made. I'm going to continue to make the second one off camera, and then we'll return to install the bead, the rice paper bead. To learn how to make rice paper beads, I've posted a video on the process, so please see my video on how to make rice paper beads for detailed directions on this particular style of bead. I completed building the other half of the pair, and I also prepared some rice paper beads. So to attach the bead, what do? I don't want to mess around with it too much, because this is ideally positioned to lock the bead in place. So I'm going to carefully just push it out a little bit. I'd like the blue to be on the bottom. Good. It fits perfect. And I make certain that the bead can't come out because it's blocked by the top part of the earring. The final step is to add the ear wires. I've constructed a pair of ear wires to finish the job. To learn how to make this ear wire, please see my video entitled How to Make the Basic Ear Wire by Ross Barbera. Now to attach the ear wires. Working with my needle nose chain link pliers, I crimp the loop at the top of the ear wire down, like so, being careful not to distort the circle of the loop. With the second pair of chain link pliers, I grab the tip of the wire. It's important to get a firm grip, and using 2 pair of pliers is much more effective than using 1 pair of pliers. With my side cutters, I trim off the excess, pressing the plier firmly against the coil that I just made, holding it down and cutting. Now I would like to tuck in that little piece of wire that sticks out. And that's always going to be the case. You have to work the end of the wire to flatten it. And I'm using my flat nose pliers. Okay, can we see that? See what I'm talking about right there? I don't find that to be acceptable. I would never leave that like that. But now I can work it down with my flat nose pliers. It's all about the craftsmanship. You want to take your time and make it as nice as you possibly can. I don't like that space there either, so I'll squeeze that a little bit more. Good. Okay. So now, to keep everything symmetric, we will take this earring, place it like that, and attach this ear wire. Have we done it correctly? Yes. I make sure I have a nice firm grip on the loop of the ear wire. Using the second pair of pliers, grab the tip of that wire and tightly wrap it around. Good. Compress it. Position our side cutters tightly against the excess wire and trim it. The earrings are finished. I had lots of fun making the video, and I hope you enjoyed watching it.